The night the wind changed its voice, the entire village of Udi felt it. The trees around the central square swayed even though the air was still. Dogs howled in unison. Crickets stopped chirping. It was as if something ancient had opened its eyes after sleeping for centuries. Chinelo walked alone down the narrow red earth path that led to her late grandmother's hut. The moon followed her like a silent witness, painting her slender shadow long and thin on the ground. Her bare feet were powdered with red dust, her braided hair tied with cowries. Her heartbeats drummed louder than the distant sound of the talking drum. Her grandmother, Mama Orie, had been the village custodian of secrets, particularly the secret of the forbidden calabash. For years, everyone had whispered about the god wrapped in white cloth, sealed with cowrie shells and tied with a black string, kept hidden in the old shrine behind her hut. No one ever saw it. No one ever dared touch it. It was said that the calabash belonged to the ancestors of Amici, the neighboring village, but was brought to Udi after the Great War. Elders claimed it held a curse so deep no eye should see its contents. But Chinelo was not like everyone else. She had always felt drawn to that calabash, as if it whispered her name when no one was around. On the day of her grandmother's burial, she had seen a snake crawl toward the shrine, coil around the door, and then disappear into the night. Since then, she had dreamed of a woman with long white hair chanting her name. Chinelo, Nuami, open it. Open what was hidden for you. In this night, the whisper became unbearable. She walked past the gate, through the old wooden door, and into the shrine. Cobwebs clung to her arms. Her breath trembled. Her fingers shook as she pulled the white cloth aside. The calabash sat on a small wooden stool, surrounded by kola nuts, broken clay pots, and dried herbs. The black string around its neck seemed alive, almost pulsing with light. Chinelo, stop! A voice hissed from outside. She froze. It was Chioma, her childhood friend. Don't do this, Chioma whispered, clutching her wrapper tightly. You know what they say. Whoever opens that calabash will never be the same again. Chinelo's eyes gleamed with defiance. They let me see what lies beneath. I have heard enough stories. She grabbed the calabash. The string snapped on its own. The god shook as though something inside was trying to breathe. A gust of cold air burst through the shrine like a scream from the earth. She opened it. Dark smoke erupted into the night, swirling around her head. It formed a woman's face, old, angry, and sorrowful. The earth trembled. Chickens fled. Palm fronds shook violently, though there was no wind. Chioma screamed. Chinelo fell backward, the calabash rolling from her hand. A voice boomed through the night. You have opened what should never be opened. And just like that, the moon turned blood red. By dawn, the entire village had heard. Old women beat their chests. Men gathered at the square. Children stared wide-eyed, whispering her name like a curse. Chinelo, the elder Ekene muttered, has awakened something older than our fathers. Ekene was the oldest man in Udi. His back was bent like the curve of an ancient tree, but his voice carried the weight of 100 seasons. He stood before the shrine with Emeka, the village warrior, and Chima, the young hunter whose father had died years ago in the war between Udi and Amici. The calabash now sat closed again, but the ground beneath it was scorched black. She must face the council, Emeka said. No, Ekene countered. She must face the ancestors. Chinelo sat quietly in her father's hut. Her hands still smelled of the calabash, like rain and fire mixed together. Adaeze, her stepmother, paced around, shaking her head. I warned your father this child carries too much curiosity. She is not like other girls. First, it was talking to herself. Now is this. Chinelo did not speak. She kept seeing the woman's face in the smoke. Her voice still echoed. The blood must be returned. Later that day, the council gathered at the village square. Elders wrapped in white cloth, beads around their necks, held staffs carved with images of ancestors. The talking drum beat slowly. Women wailed softly in the background. Ekene stepped forward. Chinelo, daughter of Ifeanyi, you opened the forbidden calabash. Do you know what you have done? Chinelo raised her head. I only wanted to know the truth. Truth? Emeka backed. Truth is for elders. You have called the curse back upon us. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Chima, who had always secretly admired Chinelo's courage, stepped forward. What curse is this? Elders speak in riddles. Ekene's eyes narrowed. The curse of the calabash is older than your birth, boy. It was sealed after the War of Rivers. If it is opened, the river mother returns. The crowd gasped. The river mother. The name itself made the air colder. A spirit of vengeance, they said, who once drowned an entire village. That night, the river began to sing, not in the way it usually hummed against its banks, but with a voice, soft and dangerous like silk around its root. Chima, hunting near the water, heard it first. A woman's voice rose from the mist. Blood must return to blood. He saw footprints in the wet sand, leading nowhere. The air smelled of palm wine and old incense. When he turned to run, something moved in the water, a tall shadow with hair that flowed like the river itself. Back in the village, Adaeze had fallen sick. Her body burned like fire. She screamed in her sleep, calling out a name no one recognized. When Chinelo touched her forehead, the same smoke that had risen from the calabash coiled from Adaeze's mouth. Ekene summoned the seer from Amici, a blind woman named Obiageli. Her eyes were white like the moon, but her voice was steady. The river mother has awakened, she said. She wants what was stolen from her, and only the one who opened the calabash can return it. Chinelo trembled. What does she want? Obiageli tilted her head as if listening to the wind. A child's blood, an elder's soul, a secret buried. The villagers gasped. To find answers, the council sent a group to Amici village. Chinelo, Chioma, Emeka, and Chima. Obiageli led them through the sacred forest. The deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. Trees whispered. Drums echoed with no drummers. At the edge of Amici, they found an old abandoned shrine covered in moss and carvings of serpents. This is where it began, Obiageli said. 200 seasons ago. She told them the story. A young woman of Amici had been chosen as the river mother's priestess, but the warriors of Udi kidnapped her to stop a prophecy of flooding. In anger, the river mother cursed both villages. To seal the curse, the elders trapped her spirit in a calabash, but the price was the soul of an unborn child. The woman who carried that child died the next day, and now that blood had returned through Chinelo. She is a descendant of that woman, Obiageli whispered. Chinelo's knees grew weak. What? Yes, the calabash called you because your blood remembers. On their way back to Udi, something unexpected happened. Emeka disappeared in the night. The next morning, they found him at the river bank, kneeling before the river mother's shadow. "I will give you what you want," Emeka whispered to the spirit. "Just give me power." The river mother's hair coiled around him like snakes. "Then betray your people." Chima caught him in the act. They fought, spear against spear, man against friend. Emeka's eyes were no longer human. They gleamed like whetstones. "You can't stop what has begun," Emeka hissed. "The elders lied to us all." When they returned to Udi with Emeka bound, Chinelo confronted Ekene in the square. "Tell me the truth," she shouted. "What did the elders do?" Ekene's hands shook. The other elders avoided her gaze. Finally, he spoke. "We sacrificed the priestess's unborn child to save Udi. Your blood is that of the child's line. That is why the river mother wants you." The crowd erupted. Chinelo felt the ground shift beneath her. Her entire life was built on a lie. The ancestors she had honored were the same who had betrayed her bloodline. Chioma held her hand. "You are not cursed, you are chosen." While the village prepared for a ritual of appeasement, Adaeze suddenly rose from her sickbed, her eyes no longer her own. She walked into the square, chanting in the river mother's voice. "If blood is not returned, the river will rise." The villagers screamed as water burst from the ground like a living snake. Roofs shook, drums fell. The river mother had possessed Adaeze completely. She pointed at Chinelo. "Bring the girl, she is mine." Emeka, still bound, laughed bitterly. "You see, the spirit claims what belongs to her." Obiageli gathered the elders, the drummers, and the seers. "To break the curse," she said, "the blood of the line must face the spirit in the river's heart." Chinelo volunteered. She walked barefoot through the forest to the river bank. Drums beat like thunder behind her. Chioma followed in silence. Chima, with his spear, walked ahead, determined to protect her. At the river's edge, mist wrapped around them like cold arms. The river mother rose, taller than a tree, hair flowing, eyes glowing red. "Child of my blood," she whispered, "you opened what should not be opened. Now you must return what was taken." "What do you want?" Chinelo shouted. "Your soul." But then a voice came from the crowd. "Ekene, take mine." The old man stepped forward, his staff in hand. He had carried the burden of the lie all his life. "Let her live. Let me pay the price of the elders." The river mother studied him for a long time. The river roared like a beast. Emeka broke free from his bonds and launched at Chima. They fought at the river bank, blades clashing, mud splashing, their breaths mingling with the storm. Chinelo stepped forward, her hands raised. "River mother," she cried, "you were wronged, but vengeance will only bring more blood. Take what is owed, not what is innocent." The river mother hesitated. For the first time, her voice faltered. In that silence, Ekene struck the earth with his staff. A flash of light burst from it. His spirit lifted like smoke into the river mother's chest. She screamed, a sound that made birds drop from the sky. Then slowly, her hair melted into water. Her shadow sank into the river. The ground stilled. Emeka fell unconscious. Adaeze collapsed into Chioma's arms, human again. Chinelo fell to her knees. The curse was broken. Days later, the village of Udi gathered under the moonlight. The talking drum sang again, this time softly. The shrine was rebuilt, not as a prison, but as a place of remembrance. Chinelo stood in front of the calabash. It was now empty, wrapped in new white cloth. She placed kola nuts on the stool.
Chioma hugged her tightly. Chima stood by her side, silent but proud. Emeka was sent to Amici to serve as a guardian at the riverbank, not as punishment, but redemption. Adaeze, free from the spirit, finally embraced Chinelo as a daughter. Ekene's staff remained by the shrine, glowing faintly with ancestral power. That night, an elder's voice rose over the drums. When a calabash is sealed, it is not always to hide evil. Sometimes it is to keep our sins away from the light. But light always finds its way. The moon turned silver again. The river was calm. And Chinelo, the girl who opened the forbidden calabash, became the new keeper of the village's truth. Moral lesson. The sins of the past cannot stay buried forever. The truth may sleep, but it will always rise when the wind changes its voice. What we fear is not always evil. Sometimes it is simply the mirror of our own deeds.